Today we're going to be doing a quick review of perimeter and area. And to do that, we first need to know what perimeter and area are. And so let's take a quick look at that. So perimeter is the distance around a polygon, so the distance around the outside. You may see the small word rim inside of the bigger word perimeter. That reminds you that perimeter is the rim or the outside of a figure. An area is measurement of the space inside of a figure. So we're thinking about when we do that, how much space is inside, how much space it takes to cover. So perimeter goes around the outside, and when we're doing area, we're covering the space. So let's look at some examples of times that we might use area and perimeter. So here are some examples of times that we might need to know area or perimeter. So let's see if we can figure out which ones are which. So remember, perimeter is when we want to go around something. Area is when we want to cover something. So if we want to plant grass, we want to cover our yard, so we need to know the area. If we want to measure the size of our home, we want to know how much space it takes up, how much space it covers. You'll notice if you ever buy a home or you've been with your parents looking at homes, that they're measured in square feet. We want to know how many square feet a house has. All right, if you want to measure a state border, the border is the outside. So that's going to be a perimeter question. If you want to paint a wall, at first that might sound like perimeter because we think about walls about them going around the outside of a room, but that's actually going to be area because we're covering a wall with paint. Buying a fence goes around the outside, so that's a perimeter question. Or that's a perimeter situation. Framing a picture, the frame goes around the outside, so that's perimeter. If we want to put trim around the ceiling of a room, around, keyword, so that's going to be perimeter. And if we want to buy carpet, carpet covers our floor, so that's going to be an area situation. All right. So let's take a minute and look at some examples of actually finding our area and perimeter. So let's say that we want to find the area and perimeter of this rectangle up here. So remember what perimeter means. Let's do perimeter first. Remember what perimeter means? It means basically no matter where we started on the figure, and I'm going to pick this spot right here. No matter where we start on the figure, we're just going to count, and so we're going to want to know how long does it take if I wanted to walk around it. I would walk this side, and then this side, and then this side, and then this side, and I want to know how far did I walk. So I need to first find the length of each side. So remember when you do this, you're counting the edges of the box. So you would count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that box, or that rectangle rather, is 8 squares long. So it's 8 units long. And then it is 1, 2, 3 units tall. Once I measure that, I know that the opposite sides of a rectangle are congruent. So I know that side has to be 8 units rather, 8 units. And this side has to be 3 units. And perimeter is truly as simple as adding all of the sides together or finding the sum of the side lengths. So the perimeter is equal to 8 plus 3 plus 8 plus 3. But there's a lot of different ways you could actually do that problem. I would probably do 8 plus 8 and 3 plus 3 and then add those answers. So that's going to give me 16 plus 6, which is 22. And so it's 22 units. So my perimeter is 22 units. There's other ways you could do that. Like I said, you could, if you wanted to, just do 8 plus 3, which is 11, and then double it to get 22 units. That's another way you could do it. All right, next, area. So we've already done perimeter, which is the distance around the outside. Area means we want to cover the space. So now we want to know how many squares would it take to cover the space. So this is 1 square, 2 squares, 3 squares, so forth and so on. I'm not going to make you watch me do all that. If I covered the whole space, it would look like this. And it would have taken me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So I could just count how many full squares there are. So my area is 24 square units. And we call those square units because they are units that are in the shape of a square. So they're square units. If they were inches, if the side lengths were in inches, then it would be square inches. If the side lengths were in feet, it would be square feet, so forth and so on. Now we could also go back and know this side was 8 units, because we know that from when we did the perimeter, and this side was 3 units. So we could just use the area formula we learned in elementary school. Area equals length times width, which you can also call base times height. And so our area is 8 units times 3 units, which means that our area is 8 times 3, which is 24, and it's 24 square units. Square units can also be written as units with the exponent of 2. It looks like it says units squared. It actually says square units. The exponent does need to go with the word units, though, not with the 24. And so that's a way we can find area. Now, we can find area of shapes that are not rectangles. For example, we could find the area of a figure that looks like this. Now, because these are, our edges are all on the grid lines, we could just count squares to find the area. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. I didn't do that in a real organized way, but I did make sure to count every square. So my area would be 26 square units. Now you might be wondering, could I use a formula for that? Yeah, you absolutely could. If you were to use a formula, though, you're going to have to split this into 2 rectangles. So here's rectangle number 1. And I would need to find its area. Its area would be, this distance is 3 units, and this distance is 6 units. So we would say that part is 3 times 6, which is 18 square units. And then the second part, we'll start right here, is 2 units by 4 units. So we would say that that part is 2 times 4, and then we want to add those. 2 times 4 is 8, so 18 plus 8 is still 26 square units. All right, so now that we've got the area of that figure, let's talk about finding the perimeter. If we wanted to find the perimeter, we need to make sure to add the lengths of all the sides. Notice I'm erasing these rectangles that I drew in the middle because I can't find each of their perimeters and add them together because I use side lengths here. And that's not part of the outside edge. So I instead have to count that this distance from here to here is 6 units. The distance from here to here is 3 units. The distance from here to here is 2 units. The distance from here to here is also 2 units. The distance from here to here is 4 units. And the distance from here back to where I started is 5 units. And so then for my perimeter, I would simply need to add those together. One thing I might check is to say, okay, how many sides actually are there on the figure? There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I should have 6 numbers. This is a hexagon because it has 6 sides. I should have 6 numbers to add together. So I'm going to start with the 6 units and work my way around. 6 plus 3 plus 2 plus 2 plus 4 plus 5. I do in fact have 6 numbers. If I add those all together, 6 plus 3 is 9, plus 2 more makes 11, plus 2 more makes 13, plus 4 makes 17, plus 5 makes 23. My perimeter is 23 units. All right. I can also find the areas of shapes that are not exactly on the grid lines. And there's other ways we can do it besides what I'm going to show you, but I want to show you one way you could get an approximate area. One way to get an approximate area is to count all of the squares that are completely inside of the shape, or completely that are completely covered in shape. So 1, 2, 3. Those are completely inside the rectangle. And then add anything that is partially or is more than halfway filled, or halfway, more than half of the square is inside of it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares are more than halfway in the triangle. So 3 plus 5 is 8. So our total area, if these were square centimeters, our total area would be approximately 8 square centimeters. For the next one, it's a little bit of a different kind of shape, but same idea. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 complete squares. And then there are 1, 2, 3, 4 more that are more than half. So 6 plus 4 is 10 square centimeters. The approximate area is 10 square centimeters. We could not easily find the perimeter with this because we don't have a way to find side lengths. So we would not, we really wouldn't probably estimate the perimeters for these as much as we might the area. So let's look at a couple of examples. I could look at shapes like this and say, well, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 complete squares. And I would say 1, 2, probably those 3 are more than halfway filled. So I would say that that is 10 square centimeters if these were square centimeters, is our approximate area for that figure. For this one, I would say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 completely filled. So 6 plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, probably 6, another 6 more that are more than half filled. So my estimate would be about 12 square centimeters. Notice I didn't count ones like this that were only partially filled, but that's okay because those are the ones that would help fill up the squares that weren't all the way filled, that were only a little over half. All right, so my estimate there would be 12 square centimeters. Now let's look at a little bit of problem solving with these. So when we don't have a picture, here's a hint. When you don't have a model, it's probably usually pretty helpful to actually draw one. So for example, not where I want to start. Let's go back here. So I want to start here. What is the perimeter of a rectangle with sides of 15 inches and 10 inches? These do mean inches. If it had just one dash, it would mean feet. I always remember that because I think inches has 2 syllables, feet has 1 syllable. So 2 little marks, 1 little mark. So 15, a rectangle. I drew a rectangle. Not a great one, but I drew a rectangle with sides of 15 inches and 10 inches. So if I wanted to find the perimeter, I know that this side is also 15 inches, and this side is 10 inches because they're congruent to the sides opposite. So my perimeter is, I could even say, well, it's 15 plus 10, and then I need to double that because I have 2 sets of 15 and 10. And so that gives me 25 times 2, which is 50 inches for my perimeter. All right. The next one, a regular octagon with sides of 7 inches. Now, there's a lot of vocabulary there. We want to find the perimeter. We know it's a regular. Regular means all of the sides have the same length, and it's an octagon. That means it has 8 sides. So I might draw a picture of this. Now, although an octagon's a little hard to draw, especially if I want them to all have the same number of sides, but it is a stop sign. Here's how I usually draw it. I draw it kind of like that, and then I connect my lines. And it's not perfect, but it gives you an octagon. It's intended to be a regular octagon. And then I can label each side as 7 inches. Now I could take time and add all those 7s together, and I'd start with this one and say 7 plus 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 7. But remember that repeated addition is the same as multiplication, so really it's 7 8 times. So my perimeter, 7 times 8 is 56. So my perimeter is 56 inches. Now notice, I did not do a length times a width. Some of you might confuse with area because I multiplied 2 numbers. It's not what I did. The reason I did multiplication is because I had 7-inch length 8 times. So I did 7 8 times. All right, let's look at a couple more problems. So we're going to, again, want to continue to draw pictures, and sometimes our problems can get a little hard. But when you draw a picture, it's going to help you. The width of a large window is 6 feet. Its length is 2 feet more than its width. So it's longer than it is wide. So when I draw my rectangle, I know that my shorter side is going to be 6 feet, and my length is 2 more than its width. Its width is 6 feet, so 2 more than 6 means 6 plus 2. So this distance has to be 8 feet. So when I want to know the area, area equals length times width. So my area equals 8 times 6, or 6 times 8. And so that's going to give me, either way I do it, 48 square feet. All right, next one. The perimeter of a square window is 240 centimeters. What is the length of one side? Now, it seems a little tricky maybe until I think about, well, on a square, I know that all 4 sides have to be congruent. They all have to be the same length. So I need a number that if I do 4 of them, if I do it 4 times, I'm going to get 240 centimeters. So I could do 240 then, divided by 4. And when I do that, I'm going to get 60. So each side length has to be 60 centimeters. And if I went back and checked and added 60 plus 60 plus 60 plus 60, I am in fact going to get 60 centimeters. So each side is 60 centimeters long. All right, let's look at just 2 more problems. A rectangle has a perimeter of 26 yards. If the length is 8 yards, what is the width? So this time we've been given the total perimeter, and we have to find one of the measurements of a rectangle. So our total perimeter is 26 yards. We know the length is 8 yards. So this side's 8 yards, and this side's 8 yards. We don't know what these 2 sides are, but we do know they have to be the same. And to find perimeter, we have to do the 8 plus 8. Well, we know our perimeter is 26 yards. So instead of putting perimeter, I'm going to put 26 because I know it's 26. And so I'm going to have the 8 plus the 8, the 2 sides I know, plus the 2 sides that I don't know. What I do know is those numbers have to be the same, though, because they're opposite sides of the rectangle. So 8 plus 8 is 16. So my total perimeter is 26. So I have to do 16 plus, these 2 together have to equal 10, because 16 plus 10 is 26. Or I could have said 26 minus 16 is 10. That's how I know that the 2 sides together have to be 10. So if the 2 sides together have to be 10, then each of them has to be 5. So they're each 5 yards. All right. Last but not least, a rectangle has an area of 56 square meters. The length is 7. That should say meters, not yards. The length is 7 meters. What is the width? So we know it's a rectangle. It's 7 meters by some number we don't know. And we know that its total area is 56 square meters. So area equals length times width. We know the area is 56. Our length is 7 meters. We want to know what our width is. So 7 times what is 56? Well, it's 7 times 8. Or we could do 56 divided by 7. And either way, we're going to get that our missing number is 8. So this distance has to be 8 meters. All right, I've done quite a lot of review here of what area and perimeter are, situations when you could use each of them, and different types of problems that you could solve. So we should hopefully then be pretty good to go with a general understanding of area and perimeter.